All right, so for this episode, it's a special solo episode. It's a special solo episode. And not everybody likes special episodes, but the ones that do seem to really like them. So I'm going to keep doing them. And I enjoy doing it. Not going to lie, I've been postponing this one for quite a bit. I just didn't feel like talking for a while. But this one is a special one to me. And welcome to the White Stripe Podcast. I am Trey Remulla. If you're here on YouTube, please hit subscribe. It helps so much. If you're on Spotify or any other audio platform, please hit follow. It helps out the show a lot. I'm in kind of a different setting right now. It's more chill. It's more relaxed. I'm by myself. So one thing about me that I realized recently is that I like to create stories in my head that, and only like 10% or 5% get released to the world. And by to the world, I don't mean the podcast. I mean like to anybody. I like to write. I like to write things down. It helps me with my personal life. It helps me understand where I'm at as an individual. And there's a part of me that I feel like I can't share these stories unless somebody asks me a direct question about it. Unless somebody asks me, hey, for example, what was the scariest accident you've ever had? If somebody doesn't ask me that question, I don't share the story. And it's one reason why I started this podcast, because I've always wanted to have conversations and to show people conversations of these people that you think you know. You think that you understand who they are. Right? And then you get to know them a bit more. You ask them some specific questions, and you realize, wow, I didn't know this about this person. There are some of my guests I've been friends with for like 10 years. And I've learned very specific things and very interesting things and very relatable things about these people on this podcast. And I'm just like, hey, that's crazy, right? Like I have an excuse to some point. And I do ask my friends questions and we do have these great conversations and all that stuff. But there's just something different about letting other people in on the conversation. And if you can't tell, I'm being extra casual today. I didn't want to like prepare myself for anything. I just put on a hoodie. Don't worry, I have a shirt under, but like, I'm just put on a hoodie. I'm like, that's fine. I didn't fix my hair. Didn't do any of that stuff. Today I'm 100%, hopefully, honest with everybody. I set out to do a Q and Trey a few days ago. Sorry, I set out to do a Q and Trey. And if you don't know what that is, think about it. What does Q and Trey sound like? So I set out to do a Q and Trey, and I'm like, hey, like ask me anything, right? It's what I do every now and then. I've got some really interesting questions, right? And I will get to those questions. But there's one question that really sparked my interest, and I will read it to you. And it made me think for a bit. It made me delay this episode. So this is the question. When did you realize that God wanted you to take the step of faith and start a podcast? I thought about this for a while, right? I was just like, did God tell me to start a podcast? And if this might sound weird to some people, I understand that. But just know that like I love this question. I love the intent of this question. I love the heart of this question. I love everything about this question. When did you realize that God wanted you to take the step of faith and start a podcast? I'll be honest with you. I didn't think that at first. I was kind of outraged by something. Go back to episode 1. You'll hear it. I was kind of outraged by something and I thought, I need to talk about this. I need a friend that I trust to have this deep, insightful conversation about what happened in our community. And that's the start of it. And then I was like, hey, I have it now. Let me go out. Let me do more episodes, right? So this is a little thing that I got from the past few weeks and really thinking about this question. If you go through the first few episodes, you can kind of see that I'm trying to talk about what's happening in the world in that moment. Listen to it. If you have, then you might have noticed that. Kind of like, hey, these are the issues of the week. Let's talk about it. I'll upload it right away. It'll get some traction. It's trending. It's trendy. Cool, right? And then I'm thinking about it. And there's a part of me that changed up how I did things. The reason why it was so topic based at first was because at the moment, at that specific time, a lot of what I was consuming were sports and news. It was happening in the moment, and you hear people reacting to what's happening in the moment. And yeah, I got great stories. I got great conversations out of those few episodes still that are pretty timeless, but that's not what I was going for. I wasn't going for the human interaction of depth and nuance. I was going for, hey, like, let's talk about what's new this week. And you can see that in the DNA of it because if you listen to it, yeah, it's very, I wanted to talk to you about this situation happening. And hopefully you've noticed, even if you haven't noticed, actually, no, hopefully you haven't noticed. Hopefully I've shifted it to the point where you didn't really notice, but I've tried to shift it to a point where we get some topics in there that are of the moment, but you get to talk to this person and you get to listen. I get to talk to this person and you get to hear their stories. They're amazing stories. And they're all creators of some sort. You know, they're all good at what they do. And I've learned a lot since starting out. I've gotten to know these people for, like, some of these people I've known for over a decade. And my conversation here was probably the most meaningful it's probably the most meaningful conversation that I've had with them. Is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? It's up to you to decide. Because some people might say, like, oh, why didn't you have the conversation in private and it's meaningful anyway? And I think I do have those conversations with people. It's just that with the podcast, I have a kind of an excuse to, like, dig a bit more without feeling, I'm invading privacy. I could be wrong, right? I could be completely wrong. I could be right, but I could also be wrong. In terms of taking the step forward into having the podcast, I'll be honest with you, I didn't feel a calling towards it. I don't think a lot of us do, honestly. Some people might, which is great. Yeah. But I wasn't struggling with this thing where it was like, hey, God said, like, I want you to do podcasting. Make a new podcast. Call it the White Stripe Podcast. Never thought of that. It was something I wanted to do. Now, does that mean that God doesn't want me to do this? No, it doesn't mean that. But I didn't feel the calling in the start. I felt it as it went onwards. And calling doesn't mean profession, right? If you know me, you know that my money doesn't come from this. I would like it to someday, but it doesn't. And that's just how life works. But I'm sitting here pondering that question, right? I'm just like, did God call me to do this? It's made me think, is this really God's call for me? And that brings up an important question. What is a calling? Is it the thing that puts bread on the table? Is it the money you make? Is it what brings you passion? Is it what you're really, really passionate about and you really want to do, even if it's for free? What is it? While it's fun to think about, like a future where, oh, look, I'm being paid for this, cool, right? Like that'd be fun. Or like it's enough payment for me to have the life I want to have. The steps of faith didn't come at the start. The steps of faith came in the middle. When I was 5, 10, 20 episodes in, wondering if I should still do this. Thinking about what are the pros and cons of stopping. I didn't get the numbers I wanted initially. I got the numbers in the first episode. I think it's easy for people to support you in your first time. So in the first one, it's like, wow. It was an interesting topic, great guest. It's trendy. You listen to the episode now, while you can still get nuggets from it, it's not exactly the same depth of feeling that you would have as it was happening. I don't think so, at least. So I remember when I was like 10 episodes in, 15 episodes in, 20, 25, looking at the numbers, thinking like, oh, it's not growing that much. It's growing a little bit, but not a lot. It didn't have the same numbers as Benta did, just honestly. It took me 40 episodes, 45 episodes to match the level of downloads that Bente had at 12 episodes. Like that was the difference when I was just thinking, and this is hard because I do it myself. So I was thinking, should I keep going? And that's the things about steps of faith. I feel like there are certain steps where it's that first step, and that's great. And that's really hard to do. I've had some of those in my life where it's just, I don't know what's going to happen, but keep going, keep doing it, get out there. So the first step in wasn't that hard. But when I was in, I was like, okay, this is hard. I had to let go of my ego. And it's still something I'm doing today. I had to think, oh, yeah, the numbers shouldn't matter as much. Because I would look at those numbers. I really would. And I know I'm not alone in that. I know that there are a lot of people like me. And I know that when you go online, people who give advice, they're gonna say, oh, don't worry about the numbers. Just be passionate about what you do. If you go on like podcasts, Facebook groups, a lot of people are gonna be like, don't make a script, just record and go with the flow. And well, that's great sometimes, and I really do that. A part of me is just like, why am I doing this? Why do I spend hours in a week recording myself with someone else, uploading it to YouTube for other people's entertainment? And I don't think that's a bad question to ask. I really don't think so. I think that's a valid question to ask. But then again, why do musicians do what they do? Artists, painters. It's expression. I remember I grew up not very outspoken. I mean, if you knew me growing up, you'd think like, oh, he's confident. He talks a lot. He talks well. And I love the stage. A lot of people, listening. And was my heart in the right place? Sometimes. Sometimes it was, maybe not. But going through this is a very different situation because I'm alone. You don't get the claps. You don't get the instant response you do when you're with real people in real life. So if you're talking about the steps of faith, I feel like it's been a lot. since up to this point. And it's been a big It's funny. People think that that starting something new is like an ego boost. Oh, it's to boost this person's ego, but it's really not. If you're like me and you depend on the numbers so much, it can get really hard. It can get really, really hard.